Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Key Value Retail Technology Podcast. We are having a new episode today, and the topic that we're going to talk about is store grouping, or sometimes also store clustering. It means the same thing. So, for that topic, I actually have some great guests today. It's Lutz Kämmerer from the Key Value team. He's the lead of business consulting. Hi, Lutz. How are you?
Hi, Christoph. Hi, I'm fine.
Great. So, Lutz, you want to introduce yourself and talk about yourself a bit?
Yeah, I mean, you said it already. My name is Lutz Kämmerer. I'm with KIVALUE for 2.5 years now and responsible for the business consulting here. Having a strong background in fashion retail. So I spent like last 15 years or so with merchandise financial planning, assortment planning, forecasting, replenishment on the software and the consulting side of these processes.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Lutz is a very valued member of our team and brings lots of benefits to our customers. I've been working with Lutz for a long time, and very often when we talk about planning processes at our customers, store grouping or store clustering is one topic that always comes up. It's been around for quite a while, so that's a topic that has been relevant for the last 15, 20 years already. But today we want to talk about what it actually is, how to do it, and also maybe what kind of solutions there are to cover that process. So first of all, store clustering, store grouping. Let's talk about it. What is it actually, and what is it good for, Lutz?
Yeah, I mean, the main reason to do it is to reduce the complexity in your assortment planning process. So that means in the end, a few store clusters can represent many stores, and then we send the same assortment to all of the stores that belonging to one cluster. At the same time, I need to consider the different needs of my stores during this assortment planning process. That's the reason, yeah.
Okay, so uh, it actually is, let's say, very beneficial for organizations that have a lot of stores, right? In order to then
Absolutely, yeah.
simplify the
Yeah.
planning process. But is it a good idea to actually treat many stores in the same way when actually planning the assortments?
Yeah, but that's a good question. It's always a trade-off between the effort that you have if you're doing the detailed planning by store and the risk to assign an assortment to stores that actually doesn't fit. So that means we need to find the right balance, and indeed defining the number of clusters and the borders to separate one store cluster from the other is an important decision, because that in the end defines which stores get the same assortment.
Okay, I understand. But I mean, how do you actually do that? It's not quite simple, right? Is it?
Yeah, fortunately, it's not too complex.
Okay.
So if you assume that, yeah, it depends. I mean, if you select an assortment for a store or for the stores from a given collection, then it's actually the main two questions that you need to find the answers for. That's first, which articles, which items I want to send to the stores, and second, how many units of each of these items I have to plan for each store. And
Okay.
yeah,
But I mean, we're talking about, or also our customers are mainly fashion brands and fashion retailers, right? So when we talk about fashion articles, isn't that driven by the size range actually? So you have one article that or one option that you need to have in your store in different sizes.
yeah, in fashion that's true. But on the other hand, do you really need to offer all the smallest and biggest sizes for each item in each store? Then maybe even covered with a large number of units? I don't think so.
Okay, so yeah, that means you can actually, or sometimes it makes sense to reduce the number of units per option, so the different, let's say, sizes, right? And have additional options instead, right? With less assortment depth.
Exactly. But yeah, that's
Okay.
right.
But how do I actually know how far I can go here? I mean, it's not it is not my target to have and have many different options which come only in two sizes each, right? Because then the customers will not
Yeah,
find their sizes.
yeah. I mean, of course not. Yeah, but I mean, you said it already because the assortment depth and the width, which are the important constraints of the assortment planning process. Um,
Yeah, I mean, there are core parameters for the assortment strategy, right?
yeah, exactly. And that's the point. We can also use them here for that store clustering process too. The different depth can be used to balance different sales volume for the same assortment width. So that means to support higher sales volume for the same assortment, a larger number of units can be foreseen than for the replenishment process.
Okay. Or I can offer wider assortments, right? If I expect higher sales.
Yeah, that's true. If you have the space in your stores to fit in the merchandise, then that's absolutely an option. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, on the one hand side, that means that space controls the assortment width, while the sales drives the assortment depth.
Yeah, it's kind of as simple as that. But I mean, coming back to the actually store clustering topic, these are the main parameters which in combination define the store clusters. So you combine the space cluster with the sales cluster. So you have large space, small sales, and large space with medium sales, and so on. So in an ideal world, a good and consistent clustering of stores is a very, very good starting point for defining the assortment strategy and the assortment modules. And the assortment modules, by the way, can reduce your planning effort even more, but that's a completely different topic.
Yeah, true. And but I mean, that still doesn't, taking a step back, that still doesn't define how the clusters are actually set up, right? So how do you do that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it depends in the end. In the case we discussed, like clustering sales and space separately, so having a separate grading by sales and space, then you would easily find out how much your stores really spread regarding the sales and the space. And of course, you might end up having like only 3 clusters regarding the space, like a large, a medium, and a small. While for sales, you probably want to go for more granular segregation, and you have like 6 clusters, for example. And that means that then in the end, you potentially have 3 times 6, 18 clusters to plan and to provide 18 different assortment plans.
Hmm.
Is it too many or not? I mean, that depends from the number of stores that are then covered with your store clusters. And as I said earlier, it's a trade-off between the effort that you have to do the assortment plan, which I obviously want to reduce, and on the other hand, the target to offer each store a very good fitting assortment.
Okay. But I mean, still, it's still quite some effort, right? Because you don't do it just once per store. You actually do it for each individual, excuse me, department or division, right? So you need to have one cluster for trousers or pants and one cluster for shirts. So a store can be a cluster A store for shirts, while it is ranked C for example, pants. So imagine if you have
Yeah,
to do it
absolutely. Yeah.
for a retail chain with hundreds of stores and also a wide assortment, that's going to be an enormous task, right? So there need to be tools for that.
Yeah, I mean, for larger companies, that is definitely necessary. As you say, that's a task that you cannot do um, on the fly or with a sheet of paper or something. So, especially the definition of the thresholds and the borders of the clusters, that is something where you would like to use an algorithm to support that. And yeah, I mean, there are different approaches to do that, and for most of them, it's sufficient to just define the number of clusters you want to maintain, and then the algorithm itself will tell you where you should place the thresholds to separate one cluster from the other, and then also to assign the stores to each cluster. So just to name 2 examples, there is a Pareto approach,
Hmm.
where you just define the number of clusters and you then give the Pareto percentages to it. So as an example, if you want to maintain 3 clusters, then you say, okay, I want to maintain 30 and 50%. So that means the largest cluster will contain all the stores with the highest sales volume that then sum up to 30% of the total sales of all stores. And in the second cluster, you would then put in all these stores, the remaining high-selling stores that sum up together with the first cluster to like 50% of the total sales. And the last cluster then gets all the rest assigned.
Okay.
That's the typical Pareto thing. Then the another one is for instance, a kind of logarithmic index approach that also just needs the number of clusters you want to use, and then it will automatically define the thresholds in a way that each cluster has the same spread or bandwidth to cover. So depending from the real sales figures, it could be the case that the sales spreads only by 30% of each cluster, so that the highest, or the store with the highest sales in a cluster is just 30% of the store with the lowest sales, and that would then be true for each of the clusters. So you spread your clusters kind of evenly across the stores.
Mm-hmm. So what you just described are, let's say, they're traditional statistical mathematical models, right, or algorithms that can be used, and that we have also implemented at many.
Yeah, there's nothing fancy to it.
Yeah, it's nothing fancy to it, but
Yeah.
it's still something that cannot be done just depending on the organization, obviously, just by using Excel spreadsheets or doing it by hand or something like that. So even though there are traditional statistical methods, they need to have some kind of software support in order to actually execute that kind of calculation, and also and that's important to say. B, even they still work very good and very well, right? I mean, we have done and implemented these kind
Absolutely.
of methods at many customers with great results. But however, I mean, we're in 2022 now. A lot of things are moving forward, let's say, from a more traditional and statistical approach to AI and machine learning. So what can be done from that perspective in the regards of store clustering?
I mean, there's one smart approach that's an algorithm that's called K-means. That's also used for other clustering purposes, and it's quite well known. And the main difference to the approaches that I explained before is that it combines the different clustering criteria, like the sales and the space that I was referring to, in actually one go. So it is not a separation of I do my sales clustering first and then do my space clustering second, and then I combine the cluster results. It does it in one go. So if you imagine the sales and the space in a Cartesian plane reflecting sales and space in each of the axes, then your stores will be located as little dots in that pane. So, and then K-means will group the stores into clusters that are kind of close to each other. So it will find the hotspots and group these hotspots as clusters. So that's a very big difference. And yeah, maybe the handling of the assortment width and depth might be then a bit more tricky, but yeah, that's also a nice approach to do your store clustering.
Yeah, so that's the advanced approach, right? Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I can also think of, let's say, visionary concepts where machine learning neural networks kind of really try hundreds of thousands combinations of assortments and options and stores and stuff like that, and maybe then just kind of figure out the best combination. But however, I think that's extremely advanced, and we haven't seen it yet working. Maybe that's something that will come up in the future. However, I mean, Lutz, it's a quite interesting and very good, let's say, overview about this whole process. I mean, in the end, there's, let's say, two reasons why you should do that, right? One reason is to simplify the planning process and not having to plan each individual store, which will be very time consuming and depending on your organization, even a task that nobody can do in the given time. And B, obviously, it's a very important, let's say, process within the end-to-end planning process that leads to the final goal to put the right product in front of the customer at the right time, right? So
Exactly.
that's what I see when we talk about this, yeah. So uh, to everyone, to our viewers and listeners, right? If you are interested to have more information on how to do store clustering, store grouping, if you want to talk with Lutz about this topic and see how your organization can benefit or improve by doing store clustering or by optimizing your store clustering, reach out to us at Key Value, and we're happy to set up a quick call, and then we can find out what we can do for you. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening or viewing this podcast. Please follow us on all channels that we have. We are on YouTube, we're on Spotify, Apple Podcast. We also are Instagram and Facebook. So we're happy to have you as a follower. And thank you, Lutz, for your insights. And we'll
Thanks.
see you soon. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.